So first I want to, so welcome to those who are joining us online. And we have a good number that are online. Naomi, how many people?
We've got 4.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we want to just say thank you for coming, for being part of our social work gathering today. I'm so delighted to be with you, and our panelists are amazing. So we'll get a chance to learn more about their careers. But just in terms of our college, at FSU, of course, I will tell you this is the best college, right? Number one, I'm a 3-time grad from FSU, so I'm definitely an FSU girl. I did my undergraduate bachelor's degree. I tell my students how old I am just because whatever, you know. So way back, 1984, did the MSW program in 85. And then I went back to school and finished for the last time last spring, right? So for those of you that are thinking, and I'm saying that because if you're thinking maybe I waited too late, it is never too late. If I did it, you can definitely do it. You know, I'm looking for my little sheet. With the, oh, yep. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we have amazing students. I've talked to a couple of the parents and just said, thank you for raising amazing people who are going into the field of social work. I think it is like one of the highest callings you could ever claim to have. I call it my beloved profession. My mom was a social worker, and I'm super proud to follow in her footsteps. I want to thank Naomi and the team for putting all of this together for us today. There is ice cream back there, right, Naomi?
Yeah.
Because I didn't see the ice cream, but I saw
We
the
got ice
toppings.
cream and toppings, all things.
Okay, so this is informal. We're informal. So you can get up anytime you would like to have some ice cream, make it special with all the toppings. We have some participants here that are sharing about their programs. So at this table, I know I see Florida Institute for Child Welfare and
Institute for Quality Children's Services.
Institute for Quality Children's Services. And back here, if you could introduce.
The Institute for Trauma and Resilience Study. And we're the Stoop Center for Communities, Families, and Children.
All right. So one of the things that you'll hear about the social work, our college, is that we are definitely invested in our community, and not just, we don't just focus on teaching, but it's about building partnerships, relationships, and really invested in making the world better, even though we're in academia. Sometimes you have that separation, right? And it seems like people are doing the real work, and then you have the academics, but we have our institutes and centers and other partners, and that helps us to stay very connected to what's happening. So we definitely appreciate the participation. All right, now to get to our panel, Naomi, did I forget any intro things?
That was great. No.
Okay, so get to our panel. So I will start at the end over there. So we have Kim Harvey, who is I'm going to read her title, Lead Professional Development Trainer at the Florida Institute for Child Welfare. And I have to tell you, so Kim and I go way back. So we work together in child welfare. So I always tell students, where you start doesn't mean that's where you're going to be the whole time. So we worked in child welfare together. I came over to FSU, and I was super excited when Kim joined our team here at FSU. So she brings a lot of experience in child welfare. All right. Then we have Victor Williams, one of my favorite social work colleagues. He is the Disposition Specialist Supervisor. Okay, let me say that again. Disposition Specialist Supervisor with the Office of the Public Defender Second Court. We have students that do amazing internships. Victor Williams creates an internship experience like no other field educator. And so I tell students when I say, do you want an internship that will challenge you? Are you tough? Are you looking for this? Do you want like real supervision that's not a clinical oriented environment? I always refer to him to Victor Williams. He's the best. So thank you for being here with us today. And then we have Lauren Henderson, Associate with Justice System Partners. Lauren is one of our grads also. And personally, I'm forever indebted to Lauren because I told you I went back to school. Guess who helped me survive it? Lauren. She was the editor for my dissertation. She helped me with all the things I did not understand because it had been over 35 years since I've been in the classroom. Right? So Lauren, so being able to go back to one of our grad students and have her help me was just, it made it so special. So, and I should shout out to my colleague back there, Lindy. Lindy and I graduated together. So she was my student. That was amazing. So we have a few questions we're gonna ask our panelists. And we'll definitely have some time for you to also get involved and ask questions with us. So as they're sharing, if you think about questions, we're gonna keep this informal, right? So if you wanna follow up, you have a question you want to ask, just let's ask the question. Connor knows how this works, right? All right, so here we go. So we're gonna start with the first one. So Kim, I'll start, I'll just kind of go down the line, but really we want to talk about how has your social work degree shaped your professional life, right? Because sometimes we think of a social work degree in kind of a limiting way. People don't really know what do social workers do all the time. So how has that degree really shaped your career?
So my journey to becoming a social worker is kind of different because it's not where I started off at. Like I have a bachelor's and a master's in criminology, in addition to my master's in social work. And I started off in child welfare before I was a social worker. And honestly, what inspired me was everybody around me was a social worker, and they kept talking about like the social work program and the values and all these things. And I said, well, that sounds like where I probably should have ended up at anyway, right? In child welfare, social work degree, and those skills are invaluable. So that's when I went back to school. I was working full-time in child protective services. And I went back and got my master's degree in social work. And I think while you can work in that field without a social work degree, I just think it gave me a different perspective in how I was able to view families and assess families and really interact with children and families and understand the dynamics that really influence the things that I was seeing and experiencing from families and child welfare. So I think it only enhanced the skill set that's required for that type of work. And so I've taken those values and those lessons with me, even though I don't work directly with families anymore. I'm more in a macro level position where I'm working with those organizations that I used to work for to kind of improve the workforce now, because I want to use that knowledge that I have to benefit children and families through the workforce. So having that social work degree has just kind of always given me this foundation of ethics and values and the lens with which I see, you know, coworkers and clients and families and children, and just kind of like my view of the world. So I take that with me no matter what position I'm in.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I love the way that you made the bridge between you were working for those organizations and now you're able to help them to get better, stronger. So you're able to take those skill sets and move to different positions. So that's awesome. Victor, you work in a non-traditional role for social work. So people don't necessarily think about a social worker running this program for the court. So it always captures people when they find out that you're a social worker. And also you don't look like a social worker. Right? And you say, what does a social worker look like? Not that. I mean, you don't have on the tailored suit. I'm gonna stop after that. So how has your social work degree really influenced your career?
Well, I always like to start off by saying that, and I like for us to do an exercise, right? So if you don't mind, get your hands and put them together.
Okay.
Okay, and put it to your eyes, right? Okay, so can you see outside of your hand, or can you just see what's in front?
In front.
Right? And okay, so now remove your hand. So you can see your peripheral, you can see more things in the right? So social work has opened my eyes to the experiences and understanding how other people live, how to assess what their needs are, and to try to understand people, holistically. A lot of times, I think prior to, getting into social work, and I did get my master's and my undergrad here, I learned to respect everyone, right? And no matter what profession, and luckily for me, I was able to get a job with our courts here in our circuit, and it's really helped the courts understand the clients that we see. Back in the day, when I first started working for the courts in 2000, so over 25 years ago, we weren't doing what's considered to be or called a frame smart justice, right? So back then, clients were always judged on their worst days, right? When they would get, arrested, get charged. And so basically all the courts were aware of is, the client's criminal history, what they would score out to, what the probable cause of the police report is of the incident that they got involved with, and everyone was tough on crime, right? However, once I started working with the courts, I started to have relationships with judges, state attorneys, defense attorneys, to start talking about things like mitigation. How does our clients get to where they are? What's their narrative, right? And getting the courts to understand that, our clients, even though they may have criminal histories, a lot of times those criminal histories are a symptom of an underlying issue. It could be mental health. It could be adverse childhood trauma. It could be chemical dependency on drugs. It could be, lack of formal education. So to just be able to give the court a complete narrative of our clients, and a lot of times the judges and the state attorneys, once they understand the clients holistically, they're more willing to allow us to link clients to different resources that can meet their needs, whether it's housing, residential drug treatment, mental health services. And a lot of times the victims are, wanting the clients to get resources as well, right? But they don't know how to help or navigate the service network. So, we, and luckily, since I've been in the office of the public defender, now statewide, we all have social workers now. When I first started, I was the only social worker pretty much in the state of Florida, right? So, and nationwide, criminal defense firms are now starting to hire social workers to do mitigation, especially with death penalty cases in the state of Florida now. It's statutorily, mandated that, social workers be a part of the defense team in capital cases, right? So, just to be able to use the knowledge and the tools that I've learned here, to, grow the social work profession and to help clients and, to get things that they need is very, very rewarding.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, I mean, like the entire framework changed once social work got involved,
Yes,
right, in that court system and really seeing those clients differently. Thank you so much. Lauren, I'm gonna come to you with that same question to talk about, because you're in a different, different area of work as well. So how do you feel like your degree in social work has really shaped things for you career-wise?
So I think when you're a student, you feel like you need to pick one specific path or one specific field. And so I knew I wanted to do clinical work when I was a student. So I did the clinical path, and I knew I never wanted to do, research and all the things that seemed really far away from people. And then I started getting the opportunities to do research and to do things that were maybe at the macro level, helping organizations. And I realized I actually did enjoy that, and it is social work, and you are still helping people, you're just helping them at a higher level. And so I started off in clinical work. I did my internship. I did one at Disc Village doing civil citations. So that's kids who have been charged with a crime and need to complete some requirements so that they can get the charge dismissed. I enjoyed that work, but it was really hard because I worked with some really cool probation officers who wanted to help their clients. I wanted to help our clients, and we were all kind of stuck. I'm like, I kind of didn't expect to be so stuck when I was trying to help people. And so I moved on in my next internship and worked at a local treatment center called Avalon Treatment Centers. And I did better intervention programming and substance use programming for people who went through the criminal justice system. And again, I enjoyed it. I loved helping people, but I felt stuck sometimes because I would be working with a probation officer and working with a client, and we all wanted to help, but we were stuck by the rules of the courts. We wanted to do more, but we couldn't. And I really did not like that feeling of telling clients, I'm sorry, like this is all we do. And so I moved and I thought, you know what, macro is my calling. And I'd always kind of felt that throughout my schooling. And so I moved and now I work with Justice System Partners. So we help different criminal legal partners kind of improve and make their systems more humane. And so my degree has helped me come to all of those types of work with kind of, like you all have said, seeing people as whole people, and that a person is not just a client on their worst day. They're not just a probation officer. We all probably carry around some trauma or some difficult experiences, maybe some mental health, and being able to meet each person where they're at, whether it's someone I'm working with or it is a client that needs help. I think social work has allowed me to do that, to not just see clients, as a whole person, but to see the people in the system that are supposed to be helping their communities as people too, who might be traumatized. And so it really just, like you both have said, broadened my lens and gave me some great hard skills in like documentation and note-taking, which is really important, of course, in clinical work, but it also is in project management, coordination, and research, and all of these other things you can do in social work. So the skills are broad and vast, and you can kind of go anywhere with them.
Thanks, Laura. I love it. I think it's such an important point to just like put a pin in that a lot of times students will feel like they have to decide now. So I'll have students come and say, I'm not sure what I want to do. I don't know which one to pick. I don't know. And so I always say, just pick a place to start. Because one of the beautiful things about a degree in social work is the flexibility you have. That you can move and switch around. My husband did mechanical engineering, so I always say, you can't decide to be an electrical engineer and just do that. Like you have to go back and start over, right? But with social work, we have the capacity to work in many areas throughout our career. So I tell students, so for the families that are here and friends, if you have social work students that seem panicked about making that decision, tell them to relax. Because you have the opportunity to do many things throughout your social work career. So thank you for shedding some light on that. The second thing we were going to talk about is your social work journey, how it's evolved over time. So when you were giving your explanation for the first one, it kind of answered a little bit of that, but I still wanted to put that question forward. If there's anything you wanted to add about what that journey has been like for you. Students are always wanting to hear that from experienced social workers. So I would let you, if anyone wants to share more.
Well, I think kind of like what Laura said, the journey for me has gone from like this micro level application of social work, working, directly with children and families and child protective services, and realizing again that like this degree isn't just for a clinical lens or for just working directly with children and families. It opens a lot of doors and opportunities. And so going from working on a micro level to now working at a macro level where I can take the lessons that I learned from that experience and influence, organizations and even policy, because at the Institute, we have legislative mandates and we report to the legislature. So now we're in a position where we are influencing, creating policy that impacts the workforce and the children and families we serve. So just kind of seeing the evolution of where I started with my degree and how I've been able to use that through the whole journey and almost come like full circle from all the way down here, all the way up here to really having that influence on the decisions being made around that part of practice. Has really, it's just been an amazing journey for me. And I always tell my students, because I teach too, and I have child welfare practice here at the college, and many students are very focused on being clinical and get my licensure because, they think it's therapy, that's a lot of what social work revolves around, and getting your licensure means that there's more money involved there. And I always emphasize to my students, like, there's so much more to social work. That's just one small piece of social work. And I can guarantee you, we were just talking about this, it's not the money that's going to keep you where you are, because people don't leave child welfare because of how much money they make. They talk about how it's one of the lowest paid positions, not as low as it used to be, but that's not why people are leaving. So it's definitely not going to be about the money. And we don't go into this profession looking for that. We're all motivated really by our values and how we can use that to help people. So just kind of like being able to see things from that perspective and see how my journey evolved.
Well, my journey, I will say it was very interesting, right? So, I like to start off by, telling you all a story, right? A lot of you all's parents, they'll probably understand, and remember this. So, when I finished school, I'm very, progressive, right? So, I want to go out and I want to change the world, like, immediately, right? And, everyone wants instant gratification and success, right? And so I did not have the lived experience to understand that things sometimes take time based on relationships and trust, right? And so when I started working for the courts, it was kind of like around the time when the parents, y'all remember when we had Governor Bush. Okay. And so, in all transparency, I am a Democrat, and I'm living, right? And so,
We welcome that. We
Yes.
welcome everyone.
try to be.
And by the way, that's one of our core values as a college, is we believe that this is a space where everyone can grow and learn together. And hopefully we're a place where there's a lot of civil discourse in our classes, where we have conservative students that are conservative minded and liberal minded and in between. And this is a place where we give students that opportunity to express their views, and everybody gets respected. So that includes you too.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So now I get the job, with the courts, and so shortly after that, it was Bush versus Gore, right? Presidential election, and it came down the floor, right? In the hanging chair, right? And okay, so at the time, Catherine Harris, Secretary of State, and she gave the go ahead to stop the vote count, right? And George Bush ends up winning the presidency, right? George Bush,
Oh, you meant.
the presidency. Jill was the governor at the time, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, Catherine Harris, she was able to stop the vote count because she was given a legal opinion from her legal team, right? And so once George Bush won the presidency, we had an open seat here in Leon County for a judge. And so a judge got appointed, a person got appointed to be that judge, right? Now, I'm not gonna say who that is, but that person ended up on the bench, right? And the first, and that person was the attorney that advised Catherine Harris that she could start a vote count, right? So, and how do I know this? I do, as a social worker, you do assessments about, people that's coming on the bench or who you're meeting with and stuff like that. So I understood who this person was that was appointed to be a judge. And so where did they put that judge? In the juvenile division, in the division that I was initially working, in, because when I started working for the courts, I started working with the juvenile. So I naturally had some friction with that judge, right? And I'm like, man, I like him, he's conservative, he, not gonna understand kids, this is just gonna be a myth, right? It's interesting, I am a Christian, right? So it's interesting how God works sometimes, right? So I love fishing, I'm a country boy, love fishing and hunting. So I'm down in Panacea fishing one day, just hanging out. Lo and behold, the judge comes and he's like fishing. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's up, judge? So he and I fishing and we become fishing buddies, right? So, and while we fishing, we're talking about all different things like kid services, lack thereof, and so he was very attentive and listened. And he did things like one day we were talking and I was like, Judge, why is it that when people have court, and the kids sometimes are present in court because the parents may not have care or anything like that to bring the kid to court. The kid that the parents may be taken into custody, right? And the kids are left in the courtroom, until DCF comes in and try to find a relative or a foster parent to get the kids because the parents are now in custody, the kids are traumatized and they're behind it was a mess, right? And I was like, why don't we have like a kid room in the courthouse, so that way the kids can be in there playing, looking at TV and stuff, and they don't have to be dealing with the traumatic, scenes of court and everything. And he was like, Victor, that's an excellent idea. Well, a couple of months later, he ends up getting voted to be the chief judge of our circuit, right? What is the first thing he does? He goes and open up, this room in the courthouse. So now we have a kid room in the courthouse, right? And the more he and we talked about the lack of services, back then we did not have a children's services council, right? So he was the chair of the initial board for the Children's Services Council that Tallahassee now has that oversees kid services and resources and things like that, right? So what is my point? My point is this, is that in social work, we always talk about creating allies, right? Your allies don't necessarily come exactly like you. They may be people that come from different environments. They may have different, political leanings, but at the end of the day, right? Effective communication and building and forging relationships can change things. These are things that data don't always show that, right? When you're learning about clinical perspectives and theories, that don't teach you that, right? What it taught me along my journey is make sure you treat everyone with respect, because you never really know when you're gonna need different folk. When I first started working in the public defender's office, it was through a grant through the Florida Bar and Legal Services in North Florida. And this was a children's juvenile offender program where you're supposed to link kids with services to decrease recidivism, right? And so after that 3-year period, the DuPont Foundation, was the the philanthropic arm that sponsored the grant, right? So we had all this nice data to show, hey, if you link kids with services, the right services at the right time and provide, support for the families and the parents, the kids won't recidivate. It's a lack of service. Right? So at the end of that grant, I'm feeling good because I'm like, okay, the plan was to go to the legislature and to try to pitch that particular program to get social workers in all of the circuits throughout Florida, right? To help kids with services, right? And I was surprised that the boss at the time was like, well, no, Victor, we're not gonna pitch this to the legislature yet. And I was like, well, why? And I was told because there's a Republican legislature and there's a Republican, governor, and we don't want them to get credit because, this is a program that'll work. We want to wait until we get a Democratic, legislature and a Democratic governor so we can pitch this to them, right? Of course, I'm pissed off, right? Because I'm like, these are resources that whether you a Republican or a Democrat, I'm sure that the Republicans will vote on this too because it makes economic sense, right? We have the data, and I'm sure that it's something that they will be willing to do. So sometimes, in your journey, if the folk that you think may be your ally may not necessarily be your ally, and things change over time. So always keep an open mind and be discouraged because how God works sometimes, he's gonna always make sure that the right people, and it may not be somebody that you would suspect. So just keep an open mind to be willing to work with anyone that's willing to help you on your mission to create change. That's one.
Thing. I love that fishing and hunting school. That was amazing. That was amazing.
Lauren, can I start with you on another question?
Okay, so just for my panelists, a time check, we have 15 minutes, okay? For our panel, and let me just ask you before we go to our next one, does anyone have any questions? Anyone have something that you wanna ask or comment? Okay, so we'll go to the next one. So Lauren, this is one that I know relates to you because we do hear about social work as a profession that can be stressful. Students ask me, I don't want to be burnt out. I want to be a social worker, but I don't want to be burnt out. And I always share that I don't understand how burnout got associated with social work. Because I decided a long time ago that that wasn't going to be part of my career, being burnt out. In any job, sometimes it's time to leave it. Sometimes you want to move on. But I think you can experience, for me, I got the greatest joy out of my social work career. I feel great about social work. It makes me happy. So that's my question to you. What you enjoy the most about being a social worker? Because it's not the public, view that we see all the time.
Yes. Yeah, I think there used to be and still is a lot of stigma around social work and kind of an idea that we play one role. We work with the Department of Children and Families and we, do these really tough things. And that is a small piece of social work. You can certainly go into that. But I think now there's a much broader understanding of social workers. And so I love when I tell people I'm a social worker, I'm like, ooh, I want to work with you, or that excites them a little because they know that social workers are probably going to come and be kind and meet them where they are. And we're not going to be really tough and hard on people because we know what it looks like to have a bad day because we are trauma informed. And so that I love. And I love the ability to be a storyteller because I think no matter what role you pursue in social work, you're a storyteller. If you're working with clients, you're assessing them and you're trying to learn their story and understand how it's gotten them here. Or if you're doing mitigation, you want to tell the courts the story of your client so they can understand they need support and not incarceration. And so I love that every role I've been in, I get to be a storyteller. And so now where I am, working kind of in research and technical assistance, I get to tell the stories of the communities that we work with, of the probation officers we work with. And you talk about burnout, it's certainly not reserved for social work. I mean, we work with a lot of probation departments to help them be coach-like instead of referee-like, which is kind of where we are right now. And a lot of them are burnt out, and it's because they don't have support, right? And what is a great person to add to your department to provide that support? A social worker. And so that is what I love most, is that it's really shifted to be, people really see now social workers as a source of support and maybe someone that will understand. And I noticed at my job, a lot of people come to me, and I think that's why, because I have in my little tagline that I'm a social worker. So yeah, that's my reflection.
Thank you, I love that. What better profession to add to your team than social work? And, you know, we tell students, social work is expanding even now. You know, in class, remember we talking about sports social work? So we are going into sports social work, is becoming a bigger thing. So the NFL contacted the National Association of Social Workers. And we're right now working with them to develop some guidelines about what that looks like. Because they're finding that a lot of the athletes, they're very young. And so can you imagine being this young kid and you, all of a sudden, you're a millionaire instantly, right? You grew up, maybe didn't have a lot. You got all these people pulling on you. You got all this temptation out there. And so a lot of our professional athletes struggle with life. They're great on the field or on the court. When it comes to life, they struggle. And so the NFL is on a mission to start hiring social workers. And in fact, FSU just hired a social worker that works now with the football team. So we're starting to even expand into sports. So all kinds of different areas. Kim, what would you say you enjoy the most about being a social worker?
When I got into social work, like, I realized that I found a profession that, and it sounds like corny or cliche, but like truly, like the ethics and values that we have, it's who I am. And so to be able to work in a profession where I feel like this is me and where I belong, I think, I mean, you talk about joy, and that's what kind of gives me the joy every day, that I get to work in a profession that, you know, I truly value. So I think for me, that it's like Victor said, that lens, like, it's given me such perspective of just the world. And I love being able to see everything from like this different point of view and perspective. And sometimes it drives the non-social workers in my family a little bit crazy, because they're like, how could you justify this? Or how can you have this opinion of this situation? And I'm like, you just have to think deeper than the surface of what you're seeing. There's more going on there. And it's not excusing behavior, but you have to understand the motivation behind things that happen. Life isn't so black and white. And I love being able to have that foundation to see the world in that way.
Awesome. I'm gonna ask my friend Victor the same thing. And then after I ask Victor, then I want you to be thinking right now about your question. What is a question you brought with you? You're like, if I could ask a room of social workers one question, this is what it would be. So I want you to be thinking about any question that you might have about social work. That'll be your turn. So Victor, what do you love about social work?
I just love the fact that we're able to create solutions. So, a lot of times, even in our personal lives, right? We always, a lot of times, there, provide resources and support for our clients. But even for our family and our friends, yesterday, as a matter of fact, like things like, I'm sitting in the office, I get a call from one of our appellate attorneys, he has a family member, up in Maine. And he was thinking about the family member is on Social Security, severely mentally ill, can't live independently up in Maine. He was thinking about bringing that family member down, telling us to stay with him. And he was asking questions about, would he still have Social Security? Will he still, be able to have the same form of Medicaid that he has in Maine? What resources are available in our area that's comparable to what he was getting in Maine, right? And to be able to link him with the appropriate resources or help my family when it's a veteran in my family to be engaged with the local VA and the access services through there. Or if you have an elderly family member and they may need long-term care, and to be able to link them and help them through the process of getting that person into an assisted living facility, home, or long-term care facility. It's just very, what you will learn over time is, for all you students that, don't realize this yet, you're gonna be the social worker for your family. And you're gonna become a de facto leader for your family. So whenever, they need some resources or something is happening, whether you have a family member that may be addicted to drugs or whatnot, you know the resources, you know how you can help them, right? And so that's very, rewarding to be able to help. And now you just have to just be careful to don't get, overwhelmed, of course, with
Yeah.
all of the ads, but you're definitely gonna be able to, help a lot of people, and that's very rewarding. That's what I love about it.
Thank you so much. And we already start talking to students too about stress and just in life, no matter what it is that you're doing. These are kind of stressful times for a lot of people, and self-care, the last version, the last revisions that were done to the NASW Code of Ethics in 2021 included for the very first time in the history of our profession, the word self-care. So it is actually now not just something you casually can do. It is actually part of our ethical principles that we are expected to engage in self-care. That has helped us with employers to be able to say, this is really jeopardizing that, because now we have it in a policy statement for social work. So self-care is absolutely, so important. And I hope that, for families that are here, you see your students engaging in healthy self-care, kinds of activities, and maybe start leading the whole family into more self-care. So I promise you it will be your turn. So anyone have a question? Since I gave you the prompt, there we go, right there.
Yeah, so this is just for anyone who wants to answer. As Florida continues to act as ground zero for American fascism, what are the responsibilities of social workers in advocating for gender and racial minorities in the face of state oppression?
That's a good one. Can I start first? Can I be included on the panel? Okay,
Absolutely.
so I would say this. So the reality, so I'm gonna tell you part of the reality, and I'm gonna respond just to social work. So part of the reality, so we're at Florida State University, right? We're a public institution of higher education, right? We have governance, right, that we follow under, which is the Florida Board of Governors, right? So, and we have lots of diverse opinions about, how we lead, how we move, how we, so social workers that I would say are in community social work, in the field, in private settings, I would say have many more options in terms of flexibility about how they respond as an individual citizen and also as a social worker. And I would say as a field, as an entire field, we have national organizations that are grappling with these same kinds of questions. So I would say we are figuring it out, what our roles can be individually and collectively. And also being responsible to all of our communities, because social work, we can't pick and choose, right? We don't say, well, this person deserves, and this person doesn't, and this person. I mean, we have a global profession and, the opportunity to care for everyone. My mom was a social worker during civil rights. And so I was reminding, like in our faculty meeting today, and I just said, you know, some of this conversations we're having probably reflect what they were having during civil rights at the same time. And what I learned from her was priceless. And that is that regardless of anything else that is happening, how are you invested in relationships? How do you show up in the world? Right? What kind of kindness are you offering? Right? So we have people that are the policy writers, right? That are doing that. We have people that are leading in courts. But the decision to be very kind and human, like we can all take that. And so I thought about it. If my mom could do that during civil rights, well, I can surely do it now. So I can extend myself in that way. So I just want to say we have individual options, we have collective, you know, as a profession as well. And I would say we're figuring it out. I don't think we were prepared for some of what we're experiencing, to be quite honest. So anyway, so that's how I would give feedback about that question. Anybody else wanted to add?
I can share something small.
Okay.
So where I work, a portion of our projects are federally funded. And so we have lots of, new requirements for those grants. And so one thing I will share advice is that to be creative and thoughtful, right? And so we were asked maybe to change some language and take some things out that really went directly against the values of my company. But we didn't just take them out. We rewrote things. We were thoughtful about the way that we talk about things. And when we worked with some of our clients on some of these projects where we had to change language and rethink things, we're thoughtful about the ways that we talk to them. And so while we can't talk about specifically DEI, right, for our projects, we can talk about how we create environments that are person-centered and how we don't just tolerate people, that we accept and make space for people. And so I think it requires first self-care and reminding ourselves that we still deserve joy in the midst of what's happening, right? All the time. Things that go up against our values. We still have to find ways to take care of ourselves and experience joy so that we can come to the work and be creative when we're asked to do things that go directly against our ethics. Of course, a lot of the times, like you said, we do have to do what we've been asked because we are living in Florida and we receive federal funding for a lot of things, but we have options and we can be creative and we can push back in creative ways. And so hope is not lost, even if you're working in a system that is, not private and you have less options. But even just something as small as rewording or reframing something and reminding yourself and your clients of the purpose can be really helpful.
Now,
Thank you.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
And does anyone else, I'm just gonna ask, does anyone else have a question? Or comment that you want to put out there? Because I want to make sure, since we did get 2 responses on that one, if we had another question.
I was wondering if you've seen any significant changes to the population of clients over the years.
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
Well,
The population,
well-
and I should say, Naomi, she's our event person. We're at the time limit. Are we okay to go a few minutes?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I just want to check.
so for the criminal justice system, what I will say is over time, yes, population has changed. So back then in the early 2000s, I would say a lot of the crime were crimes of violence, a lot of battery, assaults, those kind of things. Drug-related crime, crack epidemic, type killing. Now you still have the drug-related, fentanyl type things, but a lot more prevalent is transient or homeless population. What we see is that, similar to, how everyone know how the housing market is and affordable housing, that's become a big topic. So we're now having a lot more geriatric clients, older clients that, you know, may be on a fixed income that's getting priced out of the market, to be able to afford affordable housing, they're on the street. So we're getting a lot more trespassing, petty thefts, grand thefts, where people just trying to, you know, survive and live, you know, during these times. Which, you know, it's problematic for us because the courts, we're trying to figure out how to address, dealing with, especially like here in Tallahassee, for example, our homeless shelter that can house anywhere 200, 300 people. They're now going to, from a homeless shelter to more of a rent, a bed model, where after the first 90 days, they charge like $150 a week. So that's $600 a month, you know, so for a lot of our clients, they may not even have money, for, you know, a driver's license or a birth certificate, be able to get employed, even be able to, you know, pay that. So they end up on the street. So when for all of you all that's in Tallahassee, when you all see, you know, a lot of homelessness and people on the streets and things like that, a lot of the businesses and the powers that be, you know, they don't want, you know, folks panhandling in front of their businesses. So of course they're gonna get trespassed. So we definitely seen a spike in that.
That's good. It's really helpful. Yeah, I know that, we're seeing, when we talk about our alum that are working like in many areas of social work, just seeing a lot more complex problems, right? Just complex, that don't have one presenting issue, but multiple at the same time. So being able to have those resources to meet multiple needs, seems to be happening. And when Victor was saying the older population, I mean, our population is aging, right? So people are living longer and people are outliving their savings. Not able to take, as insurance costs has gone up for home ownership. Having a home but can't pay for insurance, so something happens and then your home is gone and there's no way to recover. So we're just seeing problems just at a more complex level. And that's why I tell students all the time, like when you talk to your families and you talk to your friends and they say, social work is easy, oh, it's not rocket science. And I say, no, it's much harder. Much harder. My nephew is a rocket scientist, but he has a formula for everything. Now, I don't understand the formula, but he has a formula. You can plug it in and it will tell you exactly what. And I tell him, when you are flying your plane, you have exact measurements. With social work, we don't have anything like that. So we rely a lot on our knowledge, right? Our capacity to understand human behavior, the complexities of behavior. We can't predict what someone will do or what they will say. So we live in a lot of gray area as social workers. And so for me, I find that intriguing because I think people are very interesting, right? But it's really, it's such a complex area and you have to be very smart to be a social worker. And that's something you don't hear all the time, but you really do. All right, so can you please join me in thanking our amazing panel?